Hi gang, the War of the Horus Heresy wasn't entirely conducted across ruined battlefields and sweeping front lines. Behind the scenes, a whole covert war raged as Loyalist and Traitor operatives attempted to sow confusion, sabotage supplies, or take out key players on the other side. And sometimes, those operatives proved extremely useful when acting in support of an army too. So in this video, we'll go through all the assassins of the Horus Heresy, both Loyalist and Traitor, and how you can hire them for some light murdering. Okay, want to do some murdering? One of the tools available to the discerning Horus Heresy general is that of assassins, lone operatives that practically any army can take to add a bit of hard-hitting murderous energy to their force and maybe take out a few enemy characters at the same time. The Liber Imperium book contains the rules for the 7 different clades of the Loyalist Divisio Assassinorum, and in the Siege of Cthonia book, there's the rules for the Traitor equivalent, the Infernus Abomination from the Cults Abominatio. So while the battle rages on, there should be plenty of room for some sneaky sneaks to sneak around behind enemy lines, and in this video, we'll go through how they all work, what the differences are, and where to find the models. The Divisio Assassinorum has been an important tool of the Imperium since the Unification War, a weapon wielded by the Emperor since the earliest days of the conquest of Earth. Through his regent, Malcador the Sigillite, a huge number of different traditions were gathered under the auspices of the new Divisio, and they worked closely with the offices of the regent himself and the Ephoroi of the Legio Custodes to maintain rule over Terra and then, eventually, over the domains of the Imperium at large. Unlike in the 41st millennium, in the days of the Great Crusade, a great number of different clades of assassins all existed, all possessing their own methods and tools of the trade. Their training was conducted in secret, and their equipment manufactured using ancient Terran science kept secret from the Mechanicum of Mars. Much like the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, they were to be all but independent from the wider Imperium, controlled only by the greatest authorities, in this case Malcador in his guise as the Grand Master of Assassins. When the Wars of the Horus Heresy broke out, the assassins of the clades were deployed into the thick of the fighting, conducting missions and raids to disrupt the Traitor command or to sow confusion and terror in the ranks, a valuable tool for the Loyalists, even conducting missions against the War Master himself. But the use of covert forces like the Assassinorum did not go unnoticed by the Traitors. In response, some factions on the Traitor side started to develop their own infiltrators. Abominatio cults had occasionally been discovered during the Crusade, shadowy organisations that used the power of the warp to create horrific murderers. Many of these have been wiped out as the Crusade progressed, but it seems that some have been preserved or sponsored by those of Horus's command who felt they needed a response to the Divisio, augmented with the dark powers now available to them. And now, these shadowy powers are available to you too. Let's start with the Loyalist players. The Liber Imperium book contains rules for 7 different clade operatives, each with their own equipment and abilities, but as with any faction, there are a number of abilities common to all of them. First, all the clade operatives are HQ choices and can only be used in a detachment that matches their allegiance. Currently, all of them are Loyalist only, but the text teases some potential neutral ones in future. They count as distrusted allies to everyone in the army. Second, they can all use the Tactical Displacement Advanced reaction, which is like a very advanced version of the Alpha Legion reaction. If the enemy shoots at the assassin can immediately move double their initiative, that's either 10 or 12 inches away, ignoring terrain, and then the enemy unit lose the chance to shoot at anything else. Thirdly, all the assassins have a new subtype. The assassin subtype allows them to ignore all dangerous terrain and any movement penalties when moving or charging through terrain. It stops them from being the warlord or from getting in a transport, and it prohibits anything from joining them as a unit. They also have the character and light subtypes. And finally, they all have some similar war gear and special rules. They all have something called the Panoply of the Assassin, which is a fancy bodysuit that gives them a 4-up save and a 4-up invulnerable, and they come with Infiltrate, Scout, and Support Squad, so they can't be your compulsory HQ. There's a basic assassin profile here that's then modified depending on which clade you pick. Assassins are all Move 7, Weapon Skill, Ballistic Skill, Strength and Toughness 4 with 2 wounds, Initiative 5, 3 attacks, and Leadership 10, and they all cost the same. 125 points. So we'll start with the four most familiar ones from Warhammer 40k. The Vindicar Assassin is the sniper specialist. They have the standard assassin stat line, but they have ballistic skill 8, and they're armed with an Exodus rifle, Exodus pistol, and the Trajector Auspex array. The rifle's the main thing here. It's a strength 7 AP2 gun with 100-inch range, murderous strike 5 up, rending 6 up, and sniper, and it's heavy 1, so they also have a 3-shot strength 6 AP4 pistol with breaching 6 up and sniper. The Trajector array then lets them ignore any special rules or war gear that would usually modify the to-hit roll or limit their range. The main rifle, the one you'll actually be using all the time, will almost always be hitting and wounding on 2s with AP2 and with 5-ups causing instant death, and it has a small chance of hurting light vehicles with that rend. It's not quite as good as it has been in some versions of the game. There's no choice of ammo anymore, but it's pretty good. Next up is the Colexus, which is the horrific pariah assassin designed to counter psychers and to a lesser extent demons. Colexus operatives have the basic assassin stat line with Fear 2, Adamantium Will 3, and the Life Drain special rule, which is a melee weapon that gives them Fleshbane, Reaping Blow 1, and AP2 in Assault. They also have the Anathema subtype. That's the same one that Sisters of Silence get, which means they're immune to psychic powers, immune to wounds caused by psychic attacks, and force weapons just count as normal weapons against them. The Colexus is equipped with an Imperium, which makes them really hard to see, so that enemies can only fire snapshots at them, and they can't use any weapons that don't fire snapshots. And then they have the big scully helmet, the Animus Speculum, which is a strength 4 AP4 template weapon that has force, so it's actually a strength 8 template weapon. It also has rending 6 up and Psi Shock, which means any psyker wounded by it has to then take a Perils of the Warp. The Colexus also has Psi Count grenades, which stops any psykers or demons from reacting to their charge. So as always with the Colexus, this is pretty situational. Their weapons can be used against anything. AP2 Fleshbane and a strength 8 template weapon are all still going to be useful, and they're still going to be safe because they're hard to hit, but obviously they're way better if you can point them at psykers or demons. Then we have the Calidus. The Calidus Assassin is the sneaky, close combat focused one who uses polymorphine to infiltrate the enemy army and sow discord, sabotaging plans and killing important people behind the lines. As a close combat focused operative, they have weapon skill 5, initiative 6 and 4 attacks, and the Reign of Confusion rule, which means the enemy has to re-roll any successful attempts to seize the initiative. Their main thing is polymorphine. This means that the enemy think they're friends, so the assassin cannot be charged, shot at, or reacted against until the assassin itself makes a shooting attack. It can continue to fight in melee as much as it likes. Until that point, they can go around stabbing people as much as you like, and no one will ever notice, which seems really good, but their weapons aren't that overpowered, so it kind of evens out. They have a Neural Shredder, which is a strength 1 template weapon which is rending 5 up, but since you'll almost always be wounding on 6 up, that's kind of irrelevant because its Synaptic Disruptor rule means that on that 6 up, it auto wounds with no armor, invulnerable, or damage mitigation allowed. And then they have a Phase Sword, which is a strength 3 AP1 sword with rending 5 up and the same rule as above. 6s auto wound with no armor, invulnerable, or damage mitigation allowed. Both those weapons can be scary. You're basically fishing for 6s, but they aren't too scary. Their weapons basically mean that if you pick the best units, line units usually, they'll stab their way through them, but if you go up against a character, you're going to need to get some lucky rolls. And the final of the original 4 assassins is the Eversor. This is the crazy, exploding, mass-murdering close combat assassin, designed to inflict maximum collateral damage. The Eversor is weapon skill 5 and initiative 6 with 3 wounds and counterattack 1. They are armed with a ton of weapons. They have a power sword, melter bombs, a neuro gauntlet, which is a Fleshbane lightning claw, and the executioner pistol, which is a bolt pistol, needle pistol combi weapon. The needle half is a strength 2, poison 3 up pinning weapon. But the real advantage here is the special rules. Friends on Rage allows the Eversor to go up to 6 attacks base, which is likely to be 8 on the charge, but any 1s to hit will cause a wound on the assassin, though they can save it. And Biological Overload means they'll blow up when they die, causing a strength 4 AP3 Fleshbane hit. So yeah, the weapons themselves aren't crazily powerful, but they get a lot of attacks in close combat to make up for it, and they're likely to get to go first to use them. The Eversor's another assassin that's focused on killing squads, but unlike the Calidus, they're definitely going to be a major target for your enemy, and also probably the most fun one to use. All 4 of those assassins are the ones we've been familiar with for years. They've been available in various metal and then plastic kits produced for Warhammer 40k since the mid-90s. The next 3 assassins are the ones that are specific to the Heresy. The Clade Adamus assassin is a sort of ninja swordsman, a duelist and character hunter, heavily based on the very first Imperial assassin model from way back in the 80s. As another close combat assassin, they have weapon skill 5, as well as 3 wounds and 4 attacks, but they only attack at the base initiative of 5, though that can be modified later. Like the Eversor, their equipment is okay, but it's the special rules that make them fun. They have a Nemesis Blade, which is a +1 strength power sword with rending 5 up, and a Needle Spine Blaster, which is basically a better version of the Eversor's pistol. It's another combi weapon, bolt pistol and needle pistol, except the needle bit is now poisoned 2 up, and the bolt bit gets 3 shots. They then have 2 special rules. Decapitation Strike allows them to swap all of their attacks for 1 AP1 Fleshbane Murderous Strike 2 up attack. So if you hit, then 2 up to wound and you chop their head off. And then Death's Artisan means that they always have to issue a challenge if they happen to be in combat with a character, but when they're in a challenge, they can choose to increase their weapon skill and initiative to that of their opponent. So if they're fighting someone better or faster than them, well, they still might die, but they'll still have a 50-50 chance of chopping their head off. The Clade Venenum assassin specializes in toxins and poisons, but in order to handle those poisons, the assassins are also genetically engineered to be particularly hardy and resistant. Again, they're primarily close combat focused, or at least short-ranged focused. They have 3 wounds, weapon skill 5, initiative 6, and 4 attacks. They start with the unnatural conditioning rule that means that they're immune to radphage, from rad grenades, or anything else that affects their toughness, and fleshbane or poison weapons can never wound them on better than a 5 up. They're armed with poisoned globes, no, not that sort, which means that anyone trying to charge them has to re-roll the successful charge roll, and they carry a toxin ejector, which is a heavy flamer with poison 3 up and rending 6 up. But their signature weapon is the Hook Fang. This is an AP3 poison 3 up melee weapon that has a special rule called the Venom. A model wounded by this assassin has to test at the start of every turn, taking another wound on a 5 up as the toxin keeps working, and they have to do that for the rest of the game. And unless they have Eternal Warrior, that model counts as dead for victory points, even if they manage to survive the game, because the toxin's going to get them in the end. So yeah, a bit of a strange one. They're the only assassin with a genuinely powerful close-range shooting weapon, and while they're not the best in close combat, their specific weapon means they only need to do 1 wound to get their kill. I'd actually guess they're probably one of the more flexible assassins to pick. And then finally, we have the Clade Venus Infosite Assassin, who is the weird one. The Venus Temple preach that the best kill is one someone else does for you. So this assassin is all about screwing around with the enemy. They can defend themselves. They have a basic assassin profile with 3 wounds, and they're armed with 2 las pistols and a sympathetic data spike, which they can use in melee. They're a strength 6 AP3 weapon with rending 4 up and haywire. They also have mechadendrites that give them hit and run if they choose, but the real strengths here are all the weird shenanigans they can pull. The Venus is one of the few models with a Vox Disruptor array that can screw up enemy deep strikes, outflanks, and underground assaults. It gives them a 50-50 chance of being disrupted. They have an Ore Spectre, a sophisticated surveillance array that means that no one can infiltrate within 18 inches of them, and gives them a free interceptor reaction that they can either make with their little las pistols or take with a single vehicle defensive weapon within 12 inches, even enemy ones. And then finally, they have the Noospheric Interloper rule, which is a way of planting a code virus in nearby robots. Instead of shooting, they can pick a single automata model within 12 and take a leadership test. If they pass the test, they do D3 wounds with no armor or damage mitigation allowed, and if they kill it, they get to do it again, but now at 18-inch range. If they fail that initial leadership check, they just suffer a wound themselves. So they're sort of a general tactical disruption assassin, but with a slight focus on screwing over robots. All those final 3 assassins are available as resin models from Forge World. So that's your basic 7. The Sharpshooter, the Disruption Assassin who can't be attacked but is always fishing for 6s, the Anti-Psyker one, the Crazy Kill All the Infantry one, the Duelist for killing lone enemy characters, the Poison one with decent template weapons, and the Disruption one with a slight anti-robot bias. All the assassins are still quite squishy. Despite their cool stuff, they're only toughness 4, so they'll be taken out by strength 8 weapons or volume of attacks. But if you can get them to their target and they can attack first, they've got a good chance of taking out much fancier characters. However, the Loyalists aren't the only ones with assassins. The traitor forces have a similar faction, the Cults Abominatio, who make spooky assassins, or one spooky assassin, because that's all there is so far, the Infernal Abomination. So this is a totally different faction from the Assassinorum, but it works kinda the same way. Cult operatives are selected the same way as Clade ones. They're non-compulsory HQs for traitor forces that count as distrusted allies. They also have an advanced reaction which is similar to their Loyalist counterparts, but also weird. If an enemy unit ends its move within 12, or shoots the assassin, or charges the assassin can Imperial shift. They immediately move 12 inches, and if that means they can't be seen or charged or shot, then the other unit lose their chance to do that. However, you have to do a leadership test to do it, and if you fail, both the operative and the enemy unit take d6 wounds with no saves or damage mitigation allowed because of spooky warp energy going wrong. They also have the Abomination subtype, which is exactly the same as the Assassin subtype, and Infernal Wraithskin, which is exactly the same as the Panoply of the Assassin, 4-up saves all round. The Infernal Abomination itself is a more flexible operative than most of the Imperial ones, with a slight preference for indiscriminate Eversa-like attacks. Its stats are like an Imperial Assassin with Weapon Skill 5, 3 wounds and 4 attacks. It causes Fear 2 and has Adamantium Will 3. It's armed with a Bone Shard Spitter, which is a 6-inch range Assault 2d6 Fleshbane weapon with no AP, and then Transmutive Armaments, which gives it a choice of 3 close combat profiles depending on how it reconfigures its body. Hammerblade is the high strength one, strength 8, AP 2, brutal 2, murderous strike 6 up. Probably your best bet against characters or vehicles. Spinelash is the fast one with strength 5, AP 4, but it's reach 2, so you will get to attack first. It's also breaching 6 up. And then Talon Rakes are the ones for lots of enemies. Strength 4, AP 5, but with Shred, Rending 6 up, and Rampage 2. And finally, the Assassin has Osmiotic Regeneration. At the end of each turn, you roll a dice for each wound the assassin has inflicted on the enemy that turn. On a 5-up, the Infernal Abomination can regain one of its lost wounds. So yeah, an interesting one. It lacks the really specialised character killing stuff. It's broadly the same sort of thing as an Efficer, but it's a bit more flexible and maybe a bit more durable. The model for it is another resin model available from Forge World. So there's your Assassins. Just a short one, it's hardly a faction or an army, but they're a cool addition to the world of the Horus Heresy and an interesting thing to liven up games. I'm not sure any of them are a must pick. As I said before, they're all pretty squishy, and since they're assassins, they're the sort of thing your opponent will try and target as soon as they can, but if they can actually get in and do their job, they could be devastating. Happy murdering! And if you'd like to hear more about the armies of the Horus Heresy, there should be a little box popping up there on your right. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can join our Patreon at the thing below. That has early access videos, competitions, and chances to feed some questions into Book Club. Or you can click the like and subscribe button just like every other YouTube thing ever. See ya!